So I'm sitting here in San Francisco, about to shoot into a seminar in a couple hours, and I've been working without break for a couple months now. I've decided to make some major shifts as far as the focus of the business that I run, and I decided that to do that, I was gonna have to lock in and be incredibly effective. Now, that might sound a bit weird to you because you're looking at it and you're thinking, why would you want to do that? That sounds pretty miserable. Why would you want to dedicate your life to building a business? And I can tell you for sure that if money was the motivator, I wouldn't be nearly as effective as I am right now. I could never have done what I did in the past several months for money. Rather, there's a different type of motivation, and that's the motivation to do good for the world. And to get a little bit weird or woo-woo, it is to do it for God. It is to do it for your destiny. It is to do it for some great larger vision and purpose that you have. This is very sanctimonious, very finger-wagging, and actually I'm gonna be covering that in this video because I think that what I've just said is a little bit unrelatable and can come across also as virtue signaling. But I wanna show you a little bit about my background and why I think this is something that you might benefit from. I think that what I'm gonna share with you is something that you might wanna take a little piece of that for yourself. So what I'm gonna be locking in on this video, we're actually gonna jump on the boat, is the way that you can actually get extreme level of motivation or extreme levels of focus or the ability to operate without the need for approval, the ability to dig deeper, lock in more, and have a focus beyond anything that you thought you could imagine. I thought it would be appropriate to do it right now because I'm right in the middle of the hardest seminar that I do all month. This is pretty deep into a brutal seminar. And so I've been just enjoying staying locked in, staying in what I like to call a state of release, letting it come to me, and really doing some of the best work of my life. So we're gonna shoot on the boat right now, and what we're gonna be talking about is the greater purpose becoming expanded as opposed to contracted, and learning that ability to lock in, drown out the noise, both the noise blocking yourself, but also noise coming from the outside, being able to control your mood, being able to operate at the cause and not the effect of your emotions, and to control your emotions, and the way in which really committing to a larger purpose and becoming expansive contributes to you being able to be almost superhuman. So whenever I do a video, I always feel like I want to talk about something unique or something that you might not hear somewhere else. And that being the case, some of the advice or ideas will be a little bit out there or a little bit weird. And for that reason, when I do a video like this, the best advice I have for you is just sort of take it for what it is. Don't take it as me telling you what to do. Don't make it about being given a set of dogmatic instructions. Just take it about as basically one person sharing their life, sharing their ideas, and if there's any of them that you think would work for you, just go from there. So my basic background was that I wanted to learn how to build social skills and get over my fear of rejection. And my fear of rejection was massive. So I wanted to get it to where I had complete control over my own emotions and be completely at the cause of my emotions, not the effect. I wanted to make it where I could decide that I was gonna be happy, or I was gonna decide that I wasn't afraid if somebody didn't like me so much, you know, as long as it's a win-win and I wasn't going over the line. But I wouldn't want to be afraid if someone didn't like me so much or giving me validation or approval. I wanted to give myself validation. I wanted to give myself approval. I also want to create a situation where I could make myself laugh. I didn't depend on others to make myself have a good time. I could be the person who's at the cause and not the effect of the good time. I'm like the white pool ball, other people are the colored pool balls. I'm the one dictating the emotion. This became my mission around 15 years ago. Now, in addition to that, I also wanted to be able to teach in a particular niche that didn't really get a ton of thumbs up from the average person. Now, the people in my niche love what I teach. I mean, I walk down the street, people are in tears, they're saying I changed their life, they're saying that I really helped them. But I understood that the larger group of people who really wouldn't take the time to understand it, they weren't exactly gonna be sitting there giving me an ovation. I understood that. So I also wanted to make it where I gave myself approval. Going from there though, in order to build a business, doing that in that kind of niche, I knew it was going to be really, really hard. I mean, I knew it was going to be the hardest thing that I ever did. I knew that I was going to have to work tirelessly and be basically hit from every single different angle of things blowing up, things going wrong, all sorts of different challenges. I knew it was going to be a lot of pain. And once I hit that point to where I believe in what I teach and it's my mission to get these ideas out there, but I'm also realizing that to do it is going to be so difficult that whatever money that I made from it or whatever like happy moments or vacations I get from it, they weren't really going to balance out. I was going to have to work that hard and I was going to have so many different headwinds to accomplish what I wanted. I had to be able to dig deeper. So I was never able to do this for these kind of wild and fun experiences necessarily. I did wind up having a lot of those, but I wasn't able to do it from that point. Now, going from there, this also got kind of interesting because as I built this up, as I made these different changes in myself and transformations, what I began to notice was that most people from my eye, and again, I'm just sharing my experience, I could be wrong about this and I encourage you to have your own opinion, but from my eye, the average person seemed very weak-willed and almost like an empty shell. They seem very much dictated by the whims of other people, the opinions of other people. They tended to, from my eye, operate basically just to get approval or to get some kind of low-level comfort, like, oh, I got to feel good for a second. I got a little bit of validation. I got a little bit of money or to take a trip. And coming from the kind of paradigm that we're going to be sharing here, that seems almost laughable. It seems literally like some kind of joke. So I think there's some healthy aspects to this, but I'd also say that there's some unhealthy aspects to it. So I'll cover that. I think there's basic pros and cons. Now, I want to lead into this by really showing you the difference or differentiation between these two modes. So I want you to imagine the movie 300. I believe that the main character was Gerard Butler, and he's the leader of the troops in the movie 300. And in the movie 300, Leonidas, the king, that's his name if I remember correctly, he was very centered, very grounded. Whereas the people underneath him who were following his lead, they were more focused on, having a big celebration. I don't know if they're getting drunk or partying, maybe hooking up, whatever it is. So they're operating more from the framework of have that kind of joyous little victory, or they get upset more easily. Whereas Leonidas, he's operating more from a mission-centered frame, and that gives him a stronger sense of centeredness or purpose. And it's not that one's necessarily better than the other. I just think they're different. That's why I mentioned that it's not that I'm sitting here trying to tell you what to do. I'm just trying to show you a frame of mind that I feel doesn't really get talked about a lot, that I feel like if you hit a point in your life where it makes sense, you may want to adopt it. So in effect, the reason why Leonidas isn't celebrating, part of that is you could say he has a bad attitude, he's not very fun, but from my perspective, it's not that. It's that he's in a different paradigm altogether. His version of fun is different. His version of fun, the best way that I would describe it is rather than maybe a physical pleasure or maybe kind of goofing off or laughing with your friends, it's more this, and this is going to get a little bit weird, but it's when you're on your purpose and you do something that's good. This is really, really weird what I'm going to talk about. I feel like almost everybody living this type of lifestyle gets it, but I feel like it's not talked about a lot, and that's why it'll come across a bit weird. It's almost like you get this download of high vibration energy, what you might call high vibration energy, or this kind of divine peace. And what winds up happening is it almost starts, when you're on your purpose, it starts to flood your body. And this is really, really weird, but in my view, the way that I personally experience it subjectively in my reality, it actually heals your body. It heals your body, it heals your mind. You can feel this happening. You can feel a tingling in the cells, and it starts to make your awareness more expansive. You can literally feel your awareness expanding. It's pretty trippy. And as your awareness expands, you become aware of different factors and you become able to be more effective. And so your version of a win, it changes from having some kind of like goofing off or joy or some kind of immediate physical pleasure. And your version of a win becomes the fact that you were able to exert your will. You were able to exert your will and, maybe even deprive yourself. But what happened was that by staying connected to that higher energy, to that divine peace, it almost feels like from a different dimension. By staying connected to that, weirdly, by depriving yourself of the pleasure, it actually connects you to that higher level of awareness. And the thing that I found kind of reinforced it in me that made me want to go further down that path, just in my own personal experience. I think there's people who went way further than I did with it, but I'm just saying from my little perspective as like a social coach and what I had to do to meet my goals. Basically what I found is that you see other people that are stressing or getting upset over virtually nothing. And it just starts to look ridiculous at a certain point. It's like, why is this person freaking out over nothing? And you'll see yourself hit different obstacles to your goals, and then you think to yourself, why would I freak out over nothing? And so what begins to happen is you're moving towards your goals, and as you're moving towards your goals, you hit an obstacle that frustrates you, but then rather than letting it get you down, you blow right through it. For example, when I was shooting this, I had a security guard or employee from this boat service say, is it okay to do that? And for me, I just quickly moved through it. I didn't have any weird emotions about it and was able to fix it. We could finish the video here on the boat like I planned. That there, it actually is like a pleasure for me. It doesn't look like a pleasure. I'm not like, right? It's not like that. But it's that joy of feeling that you stayed calm, centered, took something that could be difficult, made it easy, and exerted your will. That's the beautiful feeling that you get from it. And over time, like I said, your awareness, it's a combination of a couple things. A, your awareness begins to expand. Your awareness becomes expansive, which is really addictive. And you're actually able to see more. You're actually able to see the world with more clarity. You're able to see the world from a neutral standpoint of peace and calmness, groundedness, and centeredness. And you're seeing it in such a manner that it's almost like you're awake, whereas others are in a half daze. And there's a freedom to it. There's a freedom to not being held back by petty little wants and needs and knowing that you dictate your emotions. So in a way, it would almost sound as though what I'm talking about is a little bit like spiritual enlightenment. But see, I feel like I'm coming from a completely different, or at least a side kind of parallel school of thought on this. Spiritual enlightenment, the way that I've traditionally seen it taught, is where you deprive yourself of anything in the physical world. You stay and you meditate and you say, I don't need money. I don't need an intimate partner. I don't need physical gratification. I can stay centered in my present awareness, right? The idea of being present to the moment, that you're not focused on the future and worrying about it. You're not ruminating on the past. You're just staying centered in that present moment. So people who meditate in a spiritual path, they'll often go to an ashram and meditate. The path that I found to be more of a resonant path for me, and that's why I'm sharing this because you may enjoy this, was one where the physical world was actually used as a path to finding that centeredness. And so what I found in my observation of the world is that you had people who would be avid meditators and could find peace, but then the second that you take them away from the ashram or the meditation retreat, they start to freak out. See, I really investigated the path that I wanted to take. I really looked into all my different options, so to speak, and wanted to know what it was that I was getting myself into. So the people who I saw that were great meditators, they had a great peace, and I really liked where they're coming from. Some of them I deeply admire. I feel like they're ahead of me spiritually and whatnot. I think it's amazing. But I noticed that it was almost like if they're in their peace zone, where they're not challenging themselves too much, other than challenge of deprivation, then what would happen is they would be more present and centered than me. But as soon as you put them into stress, they would shoot down to here, whereas, if I was about 70% what they were, say that they're 100 and I'm a 70, under stress they'd become a 0 and I'd go from a 70 to 100. As weird as it, the competition, the spiritual competition. I mean, I'm just trying to call it how I saw it, and there's probably something I'm not seeing clearly here. Probably I'm wrong in some way or misinterpreting it. I'm not the ultimate expert on this, but I'm just sharing again a perspective that I had. So what I felt also was that 70% slowly grows a little bit every year to where as you have these different obstacles, as you go through these different pains, because maybe you lose your centeredness, you have that freak out, you get upset, and then you see how it holds you back from your larger goal. What winds up happening is that you use that mistake, that kind of like, you allowed the pain body attack to come in you allowed that kind of neediness for an outcome, that fear attack, that ego, as it came back. You see directly how it creates an obstacle for you. It actually holds you back. It makes life worse and less good, takes you away from your obstacles, doesn't help you at all. And then it winds up getting it to where you come back to the same solution over and over. What's the solution? Be more present. So you keep coming back to that. So the path itself becomes a very spiritual path, even though from the outside, what it looks like is more like you're this materialistic person, let's say focusing on a business or a challenge or something in your ego. So on the surface, it looks very surface driven, but in fact, it's something very, very different from that, something categorically different. Now, what I also saw on the other side of the equation, I mentioned this, is people who focus on their business, but they become completely enraptured in the physical, and their identity is wrapped up in physical results. And I would also see issues with that. So in the kind of woo-woo side of enlightenment with the meditators, I saw that they're always trying to hide from stress. What I saw with people that are more on the physical side, like say business entrepreneurs, is that they were never really happy in the first place. Like they say that they're happy when they make money, but they were typically unhappy. They didn't enjoy it either. See, the funny thing is, here's a funny point for you. If you just want to be happy, you just want to have leisure, you just want to make money and have a relatively good lifestyle, you could actually argue that being an employee and a lower level employee that just makes a decent income is probably the best. Because in my experience in business, even when you make a ton of money, the kind of challenges that you're going to go through in business are going to be so great that whatever money you made probably isn't going to pan out. So, from that standpoint, you ask yourself, well, do I want to completely give up on this idea of business? Do I want to not fulfill my goal? Maybe you have a goal, it's not a business, but a goal. Well, if you're determined to do it, then what happens is that you go into a different paradigm. It's simply a different paradigm. You go to a different level. Going under the Golden Gate Bridge right now, by the way. It's pretty fun to be here. So what I found in my experience was that there's different energies that can inhabit somebody, okay? There's different energies that inhabit somebody. And that energy that inhabits you, it's either what you'd call a present high vibration energy, which is a giving and expansive energy, or it is a taking and denser energy that is actually in contraction. So one is like the sun, where energy is expanding out. The other is like a black hole is taking. And what I believe is that those kind of energies actually move around and we tune into them. We're receivers and outputters of them in our human experience. So one thing that always kind of jumped out at me was that we have to make a choice if we're going to be on kind of the light side or the dark side of the force. And I feel like through movies and conditioning, we're told to be on the light side. But what happens if you're intelligent is you start to ask yourself questions, which is this just societal manipulation to tell me to be a good little boy or girl, a good little person, right? A lot of that idea of be a good person, there are elements in that or flavors in that of what's in effect mass societal control. And so somebody who's intelligent may begin to look at that and say, yeah, that's just what they do to calm down the suckers. And they'll look at it even a little bit more deeply than that too. There's actually a different level to look at it than that. They'll look at it and they'll realize that most people are actually quite selfish, although they have a beautiful side to them, and that's part of what these videos are to help you cultivate, by the way. But most people are actually quite selfish. Most people lie about it. Most people, when not being monitored, will do a lot of bad stuff. So if that's the case, why not just see that, embrace it, and then just be a taker yourself, right? If everybody else would do it anyway, if in truth, everybody's out for themselves anyway, they're just lying and claiming to do it for God, or claiming to do it for the high vibration energy, or claiming to be a good person. If that's just a bunch of virtue signaling, if that's just a bunch of nonsense in effect so that people can look good, but really behind the scenes, that same preacher is the first one doing some of the most ridiculously negative stuff. I mean, some of the stuff they do is so crazy, right? That same person is like, be good, be good. And behind the scenes, what are they doing? So at a certain point, if you're intelligent, you do begin to see that. You do begin to kind of open your eyes to that, and you start to ask yourself questions. You say, well, if that's what reality is, why don't I just do what works for me? Which, by the way, you should do things that work for you. It's just that it's called a win-win. So as you become aware that many of the people who are preaching to be good are in fact hypocritical, anybody who's critically thinking would begin to ask questions. Is this really what life is? What is the most logical path? Somebody who's philosophical and not a sheep would begin to ask questions like that. And I definitely ask those questions, not because I want to do anything win-lose, but simply because I'm somebody who thinks about every angle. And I'd hope that you would too. I hope that you think for yourself and don't just get force-fed different information. So when you see the hypocrisy, it's only natural to start to ask yourself questions. If somebody else won't live up to this kind of social contract and they're just giving it lip service to virtue signal, then should you? And here was the answer that I got. So, like I've said many times, there's a creative energy and a destructive energy. And really, in the same way that you could look at, say, attraction between people and look at it more deeply, and if you look at it more deeply, you can begin to see things that the average person couldn't see. Just, you've got to look, you've got to pay attention. You can start to look at that energy and how it's running people. You can tell by looking in the pupil. You can tell by looking in their behavior. You can tell by looking at what they resonate with. You can tell by many, many different things. You should really, really, really be able to tell. You can tell a lot. So exactly the same way that I've brought you many of these videos about social interaction and social sub-communication, I can bring you the same types of videos about energy and about what energy's running somebody, I can bring you that same type of content because I simply look for it, right? I didn't get these ideas about, say, dating or social interaction handed down to me on some kind of stone tablets, right, from a burning bush. I got it by looking and by having mentors that taught me how to look. In the same way, I've had mentors that have taught me how to look, and I've looked, and I've spent years looking. So I'd encourage you to start looking. Start looking at people who are run by negative energy. And what is it that you're looking for? Well, in energy work, we have high vibration energy, peace, love, expansion, sharing, lightness, playfulness, infinite, abundant. Think of how you feel when you think about sharing. I've got your back. Just say that word. I've got your back. I'm here for you. I love you. I'm here to help. There's unlimited amounts of abundance in the world. I want to be playful with you. I want to be creative with you. I want to share. Think of how you feel. And just let that energy inhabit you. Let it run you. Invite it into yourself. You've got to invite it in. Now, then what I want you to do is think about dark energy, a taker energy. So instead of being like the sun, it's like a black hole. I'm going to take. I'm going to take what's mine. There's scarcity in the world. There's not enough. Everything is win-lose. Everything's dark. Everyone's lying. Everyone's a hypocrite. And if they're going to be a hypocrite and not go by the social contract, why should you? You've got to get yours. It doesn't matter. Life is pointless. Think about that for a minute. Now, what happens is you make a decision about what kind of energy is running you. In energy work, we have to make the decision. They call it, we tap into the creator, not the creation. What does that mean? It means that your point of awareness is on the present moment, on abundance, on peace, and you're acting through that peace, okay? It's like almost like if you were just kind of goofing off, laughing with your friends, and you're kind of laughing and shedding jokes, and everything you're doing is like coming from that fun state and it's emanating out. Well, there's more subtle layers of that, right? There's a peaceful energy, and that's, by way of looking at it in energy work, that's the expansive energy of the world. So that's so beautiful. And that can be running you. Or you can be run by a darker energy, which is a physical energy. And see, in the physical, everything dies. In the physical, there's scarcity. In the physical, there's entropy. In the physical, there's decay. And somebody who's being run by the physical is going to be looking for a win-lose because there's scarcity, as opposed to when you're coming from a high vibration energy, you're looking for a win-win. Now, if you decide to move into high vibration energy and to be positive, do it for God, do it for a higher purpose, that doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. You're going to slip up. I can have bad moods. I can become paranoid or negative. That can absolutely happen to me. It's tough when it does, right? But that's the point of what I said earlier, is that in having a goal, maybe it's a business or some larger purpose, that becomes, it's like iron sharpens iron. That iron is there to kind of whack you down a little bit, to bring you to your knees, to upset you, but then to allow you to be pulled away from presence and find your way back. And that's coming at your goals from a whole different context. How do you guys enjoy watching the video recording, by the way?
Fantastic.
Great. And by the way, did you guys notice how I just nail it out? No excuses, cold, don't care. Tired, voice messed up, don't care. So keep that in mind. Lock in. It's what I showed you today about getting present. Locking in, boom, go, okay? Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, guys, give me a hug. I'm gonna let y'all go to sleep. Give me a big hug. Thanks for being out here.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you guys back. So what I want you to get from this is a clear-cut ROI, some kind of return on investment, because I feel like what I'm saying is gonna connect to the woo-woo crowd who are already getting it, right? It's like preaching to the choir. Oh, be good. And people who are in that mode, they're like, oh, great. I'm already doing it, great. But I want to talk to you if you're somebody who's a hardcore grinder, hustler, entrepreneur, somebody who's locked in on your goals like no other. What I have found is that typically in the idea of spiritual growth, we say that we become happier. The idea in spiritual growth is that you let go of your ego, you let go of your self-image, and you merge into the present moment. And to do that, you become happier. The idea is that by nature, you're happy. And the overthinking, what the overthinking does is it gets it to where you deprive yourself of your natural happiness. That's the first idea in The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. The idea of The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle is that you're naturally happy. Happiness is actually your default state. And what you're doing is you're depriving yourself of that happiness by thinking too much. So if you simply stop thinking, then what winds up happening is you become happy, right? Get out of your wants, get out of your needs, and just be present. And when you do that, when you're just present, you feel happy automatically. That's the idea of The Power of Now. Well, I believe that we can extend that not into, say, happiness, but into work, into competence, into effectiveness. I think there's entirely different levels to this. Because here's what happens. If you're a hardcore grinder, you're a hardcore hustler, you hear about the power of now and you hear, if you stop thinking, you'll be happy. If you're a hardcore hustler, what you've noticed is that people that are centered on being happy, they're manipulable. They're empty shells. They're the masses. You don't want to be like that, just some person that doesn't think to become happy. Why would you do that? Remember I talked earlier about Leonidas in the movie 300? You want to be like Leonidas, the person who's not being run by that need for happiness. So if anything, you probably are priding yourself on not needing to be happy. So you hear about being present to the moment or doing it for a bigger purpose, and you think, why would I do that? I don't want to be one of those happy, kind of blank looking like people that just buries their head in the sand. I want to be that realist. I think that's great that you're thinking that. If you're thinking that, that's amazing. Thank God you're thinking that. Thank God there's people in the world that actually have critical thinking, that have thoughts like that, so that we're not just living in this empty, kind of ridiculous, fake world. But another way of looking at it that I'd encourage you, that I haven't really seen covered, is that in many ways, becoming present to the moment, doing it for a higher purpose, doing it for a greater purpose, doing it for a divine destiny, doing it for whatever it is that's meaningful to you. Okay, that's maybe how I subjectively process it. Let's not worry so much about me, but something in you. Where's the benefit there? Well, it's like I said, if you look into my eyes right now, when I'm shooting this video, there's many different obstacles. We'll see the camera will get all messed up. We'll have different interruptions, different lighting issues, different challenges. And what I've taken from it is that my mind just stays locked in. I don't let it begin to affect me. I just stay locked in. I've shot videos right there on Golden Gate Bridge in the freezing. And the people who I'm shooting with are just shivering and shivering and shivering. They're freezing. I can get like that too at times, but the threshold that I gain from that is a lot more. A lot of my friends, they'll say things like, if I go on stage, I've got to be in a good mood. I don't want to be in a bad mood for when I'm on stage, people who I worked with. I used to be like that. I'd be like, well, I've got to be in a good mood when I go on stage. Over time, what began to happen was, even if I'm in a bad mood, I could jump on stage and immediately change my state and be in a good mood. Or if I'm underslept, I can still be on camera. Recently, I've been on this huge work binge. I decided to move from just teaching social skills or dating and into my larger self-help vision. I did that for many reasons, but one of them was that I made a promise to myself that at age 40, I was gonna make the switch. And I knew that I had to execute on that switch. And so I wound up having to move very quick to create new content, new videos. And in doing so, as I shuffled around the entire enterprise that I've been building, believe me, that you take down that many videos, that's gonna put you into chaos. And rapidly, I just wake up every day and just keep chipping away at it, staying locked in, staying focused. I'd hear about different problems. I'm not gonna let that affect me. I'm gonna say just like this, staying present. That's what I'm trying to show you. You don't need to be held back by tiredness. That doesn't mean you shouldn't rest. I'm gonna make many videos about active recovery. You don't need to be held back by mood. You don't need to be held back or limited by the need for pleasure. There's other levels. There's other levels that you can go to. Now, in doing this, you may drive yourself kind of nuts. So be aware of that, okay? This is not all just upside. I feel like there is an upside to the soldiers of Leonidas, kind of just partying and having fun. That's where they're at. And there's an upside to this kind of lifestyle. I just think that whatever works for you, you should determine that and then figure out what is the best. So, like I said, there's a direct ROI here. And that ROI is that you're free. You're not limited in the way that other people are. And you get other forms of pleasure that other people would never even have access to or a context for. And even crazier is then, if you want to go on some little trip, or if you want to go eat at a nice restaurant, or if you want to look super cool on social media, or if you want to go buy a big mansion, or if you want to goof off with your friends and do that, you can do that. But see, here's what happens. The mansion, or the wild, spicy dating life, or the very attractive partner, or the money, or the accolades, it becomes at the periphery. People will look at you for the life that you've built on the outside, on the periphery, and they'll think that that's why you're happy. They're completely unaware of a much deeper and more profound inner world that you're living in, to where you're beyond that. You're on your journey, your path. You are in the process of seeing to what extent you can become present, to what extent you can yield, to surrender, to harness energy, to expand, to give. You're seeing what you're capable of. You're seeing what your potential is. And marketers don't want you to know about that. Mainstream society doesn't want you to know about that, because that means A, you're not going to be easily controlled, but B, many of them are stuck in that low vibration energy in the first place. So they're going to never want you to know your fullest potential, but I do. So here's the best way I'd put it to you. I'm going to give you a couple. This is nice. Oh, are we at Alcatraz?
Yeah.
How cool is this? We're talking about freedom, and we're literally passing by Alcatraz right now. Wow. This is beautiful. I learned about Alcatraz as a kid. I always wanted to come here. I didn't even know that the store was coming here.
I was a man that had total hatred and hated anything that walked the call on this earth. And when you got a man
I'm glad to share it with you. So I'll probably come back here with my kids. My kids are on this boat too. They're out there. And I'll come and we'll visit it. But in the meantime, it's just cool to be here for the first time. So see, we can have an experience like this.
These were hard kidnapped.
Just come check it out. But that's at the periphery of your experience. There's a deeper well here, right? There's the depth, and then there's the surface, right? That's like the cross. The depth, the spiritual side, the surface side, that there is the breadth, that's the physical, right there. So we can have a physical experience. Oh, I went to this cool little place that I heard about as a kid. I'd watch movies about this, like the movie Alcatraz, Sean Connery, Nicolas Cage. Is that it? That's cool. But at the same time, there's a deeper well here. I don't need to have this to be happy, do you understand? So that's the kind of mode that I want to be coming from. Now the basic symptoms of this, I told you, I'm going to talk more about ROI. The ROI here is that you are not going to get thrown off and upset as easily because you have a greater sense of groundedness. How did I come to this? Look, I would be going out, working my social skills, and I noticed that I'd still be nervous. And I think to myself, how do I stop being nervous? So I'd study it. And one of the books that I read that first helped me on this was David Data, The Way of the Superior Man. And in the book, David Data, The Way of the Superior Man, he says that you have to have a greater purpose than just your partner. And that greater purpose grounds you. So I thought about that. I was like, oh, this could get rid of my social anxiety. Maybe if I had a greater purpose, my social anxiety would go away. Because I would go out every night learning on how to approach and meet people. I would do this all the time. I was constantly trying to do this. So what I did was I would try to break my approach anxiety in a number of different ways. And it was through all sorts of different reframing that I did and different ways of building momentum. These are very helpful, actually incredible, to tell you the truth, really good. But another big one was having that larger purpose, having a greater reason that I'm doing something. And so what it would do is it makes it to where, say you had an approach that didn't go so well. Whoa. Okay. So say that you didn't have an approach that would go so well. And you'd think to yourself, oh, I feel bad about that. Well, what happens is, here's the key to this whole thing. When you don't have a greater purpose, nothing matters. And when nothing matters, everything matters. When you don't have a greater purpose, nothing matters. And when nothing matters, everything matters. Which means that if you have a little parking ticket, what happens? You're mad. Because nothing matters, so everything matters. If you miss a flight, you're infuriated, you go crazy. Because if nothing matters, if there's no greater purpose, then that big flight matters too much. If you're tired for work, because nothing matters, there's no greater purpose to it, all that you think is, I'm tired. I missed my flight, I got a parking ticket, I'm mad. That's all that you can think about, because if nothing matters, everything matters. You get approach anxiety. I feel anxiety, I'm mad. Because if nothing matters, there's no greater purpose, then everything matters. If nothing matters enough, then everything matters too much. So I was actually able to chip away a huge amount of my approach anxiety simply by having a greater purpose. A lot of people say it's when they have kids. You ever heard that? That's maybe a little bit more relatable, right? A lot of people say that when they have kids, they change. What does that change? It's simple. You learn what's actually important. That's the major change that you have when you have children. You realize all these things that you thought were important are irrelevant, or maybe sadly you have a friend die, which ideally would never happen, but it typically will. And that's sad, but one of the benefits of that is that you say, wow, my friend lost her life. I was focusing on all the wrong stuff. For example, I had a friend die this year, and he would always, we're great friends, but naturally, like any normal human being, anybody would do this, he would complain about his wife. Who wouldn't complain about that? I mean, it's frustrating. Well, if he'd known he was gonna die, would he have let that get under his skin? I don't think he would, and I think he'd be quite proud that I would take the loss of his life to share that with you. And we all fall in and out of that, right? I've had it where I had a near-death experience, and then, I realized, what is it that really matters in life, and then later I'd still get mad at some little petty thing or another petty thing, and I can do that now. But the idea is that, again, we're on a journey. It's not that you have to be perfect with this now. We want to improve over time. So what winds up happening is you can improve over time at this. You can get better as you go along. You don't need to be perfect at this exact second. You can just get better over time. So because of this, I was able to improve issues of mine like being mad in different business things. I mean, I've had it with such challenges in my business, I think almost anybody would have given up. It wouldn't have been worth it anymore. The pleasure you'd get from it wouldn't add up. But I have a mission. My mission is so important. It's what gives me life. It's what connects me to what's up there. So for any reason this mission were to fail, I'd dust myself off, I'd find a new mission, and that can happen too. But overall, as a powerful human being, my goal is to have some greater purpose. So see, my purpose is that I want to share and help and improve, and I want to grow that into prosperity, and I want to see prosperity on earth. And so what happens in this process is that you will get to a point where, again, you're not shackled by being too tired. You should get active rest. I'm going to make other videos about active recovery. Respect your body, but there's going to be times where you don't have rest. There's going to be times where you don't have that pleasure. There's going to be times when things come up that are bad, and you're not going to be shackled by that. You will become at the cause, not the effect. You will begin to tap into high vibration energy. You will love that and feel the power of that and expand. I always say the level at which you reap or the level at which you beef is the level of the person, the level of the human being. So if someone bothers you a little bit and then you feel the need to start beefing with them, it's because you're in scarcity. That shows that you're a smaller person. Likewise, if you're talking to someone, all that you can think of is what you're going to get from them. That's the level at which you reap, right? The level at which you beef or the level at which you reap is a pretty good indication, right? The size of the problem is the size of the person. Lower level people, and there's a great quote about this, I think from a first lady at some point. It was like, lower level people talk about other people, higher level people talk about things that happen, even higher level people talk about ideas. It was something like that. I can't remember the quote. Maybe I'll post it. So you can see the size of the person. So when you're a smaller person and you're focused on smaller level things than yourself, your awareness is contracted. It cuts you off from intuition. Let me say that again. It cuts you off from your intuitive powers, because as you expand, your intuitive powers get really, really intense. It cuts you off from the flow. It cuts you off from different aspects of self-healing. It cuts you off from expanded awareness, because your awareness is constantly contracted, so you don't even see how you're making other people feel. It cuts you off from your highest levels of creativity. And it cuts you off from one of the most profound experiences you could ever have. But when you tap into that higher power, when you want to give, your awareness expands. You're not thinking anymore so much. You're present to the moment, so you're not really thinking nearly as much. Most people, they're thinking, how do I look? Do I look cool? Am I hungry? What am I getting? That's the average person. You're not thinking about that. Which now all of a sudden your awareness is out here. Could make you into an incredible public speaker. Your awareness is out here. Could make you great at dating, socializing, meeting people, networking, making friends, because your awareness is out here. You're able to have really crazy social intuition. I grew up with some kind of light level autism. Pretty intense. But is what I had light level autism? My firstborn son Vincent is autistic, so I know the symptoms. I think that's what I had. Some people call that Asperger's. But at the same time, is perhaps what I had such a severe contraction that I couldn't even read any social cues at all because I was so contracted. Many people who I work with, they're so energetically contracted because there's so much thinking about themselves. They're such a small me, they can't be aware of anything. They're completely cut off from intuition. Their voice doesn't project. Like when you're expansive, your voice just projects. It's beautiful. You're able to be aware. You're able to be in flow. You're able to make quick decisions. You're not controlled. You're free. So it's very powerful. Now here's the kind of last bit crazy idea. You've seen the movie Star Wars. We have the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force. And many of the people who I've known over the years, including great friends of mine, they will tap into that physical side. Many of my friends who are very logical and not easy suckers look at that hypocritical aspect of being a good person. They look at it and they say, I'm not going to be one of those suckers listening to all these hypocrites that tell you to be good while they themselves are not good. I'm not going to be one of those suckers. No, no, no. But what happens then is that they tap into that win-lose energy, that taker energy, that side of the physical. And they become very, very effective at getting what they want in the physical. But you'll notice they get deep wrinkles in their face, black bags under their eyes, and they get that same powerful laser-like gaze that you get when you're inhabited by high vibration energy at the light side, but they get it like a shark. Wrap it up. We're going to finish this right on the period. So, like I was trying to get to on the boat, if you've invited in very positive, life-giving energy, you're going to have a certain look in the eyes. And that's going to be very beautiful. And it's going to be very steady. The reason why is because you're tapped in. And being tapped in means that your emotions are going to be relatively just positive and steady. So what happens with most people is they get a little bit of positive, they get a little bit of negative. And then as a result of that, what winds up happening is they vary based on what's happening, right? So say that you're on the boat and the security guy comes on, he says, oh, I don't know what you could do. They're going to start to get affected quickly because they have a need or an outcome, as opposed to enjoying the action itself. So in the book, the Bhagavad Gita, which is a spiritual book, the idea they share through his stories, a story about war, is that we have the right to the action, but not the fruit of the action, okay? We have the right to the action, but not the fruit of the action. That's that whole idea that you want to embrace the creator over the creation, right? We have the right to the action, but not the fruit of the action. What that means is that just in the motion itself, we find happiness. Just in the motion itself. Just in the glory of the present moment. We don't need the fruit. What happens when you need the fruit is you're telling yourself a story. Why would I be happy? I don't want to be one of those dopey happy people. I don't want to be one of those dopey spiritual present people. I don't want to be one of them. People like that are sheep. They're blind. They don't see the truth. They're duped by all the hypocrites that feed them on this collaborative narrative to support society so they can take more. What you want to be coming from is a point where you're saying, I feel good in my body. I feel good in the action itself. The action itself gives me the happiness. So now there's this base, there's this foundation. Then beyond that, whatever great results you get, that's a bonus. And you can enjoy that. You can say, wow, how could it get any better than this? How cool is this? But then what happens if something goes bad, that happiness, that's at the periphery. So if it gets taken from you, you still have that powerful foundation to rely on. You're not at the whims of the up and downs of the physical. Now, somebody who goes deeper into the physical, often if they go very deep in the physical, because I have great friends like this, what winds up happening is they get to the point where they also have a steady gaze. But is that like a shark? If you look up, say, sociopaths or bad people online, you can actually see what they look like in the eye. So you can actually see that same steadiness, but they're tapped into a darker energy. Like I said, they get lines under the eyes, lines too much in the forehead. Now, it's not that I'm not going to get that too, but they get it sooner because they're accessing the energy of decay. You've seen Star Wars. Look at the Emperor. Or anybody tapped in the dark side of the force. They start to wrinkle prematurely. That's a metaphor that George Lucas could sort of intuitively see, or maybe he has access to different circles that taught him this. I'm not clear on that. So that's that same metaphor. It's that premature aging because you've given yourself to that dark side. Or at the end of Star Wars Episode 3, Anakin, he says, I don't trust you. I think you're against me. Look what you did. What it does is that by tapping into that physical energy, it taps you into delusion. And you'll start to make bad decisions. I have consistently seen very low quality decisions that can be incredibly destructive from some of my friends that are tapped in the physical. They're so smart, they're brilliant, they're independent thinkers, they're mavericks, I love them. But they'll make these critical decisions that are bad. I have too, I want to be fair. But I see that what I see is that the energy running them is causing them to make lapses in critical judgment, and they're blind to things because, in effect, whatever energy that you're tapped into will determine your reticular activation system. So your selective focus, your RAS, is going to be governed. Look up RAS, reticular activation system, if you're new to my content. Look it up. Look it up. It's everything as far as your perception. So somebody who is accessing higher energy, life-giving, positive energy, what happens is that their reticular activation system is being dictated and focused on things that are going to give further reinforcement to that, and they're going to want to guard life. People in a darker energy they're going to be in a taker energy. And their reticular activation system, what's going to happen is they're going to get certain wins from it, but they're going to make these critical lapses in judgment. Because the dark energy wants to destroy everything. It is the energy of death and destruction. It is the energy of entropy, of death. And so what happens is that at some point, it's like this circular firing squad, right? It's at some point, if you're on a boat, there's a crocodile there, you keep throwing people off to feed the crocodile. At some point, there's nobody left but you, and then the crocodile eats you. So that's what happened in my experience with people that are tapped in negative energy. They make these horrible lapses in judgment, so sad to watch. And I watch that energy of death running them. So you can begin to see that in the pupils. There's a softness, a lightness, and steadiness in somebody who has surrendered to a higher purpose. So when I started this video, I said, do it for God. Sounds very sanctimonious or very When in reality, I would tell you right off the bat that I don't always do that. I have my low moments. We're all on a journey. If I'd fully figured that out, I would have probably transcended some other dimension by now. But I'm not there. But it's a path that I've just tried to walk, and I feel like it's often not talked about in day-to-day life, or the people who do talk about it are doing it to create, not to be mean, but in some cases at least, they're doing it to create sheep. So then anybody with critical thinking moves away from it. How sad is that? In many ways, these people that are preaching to be good, you might argue they actually might be a net negative to some extent. Like that person on the street saying, Jesus will, you're going to go to hell if you don't believe in Jesus right now. Everyone looks at it and just goes, that's crazy. It's almost taking them away from even want to look at that. For me, I wasn't in organized religion or studying Jesus so much, but for me, it was just that surrender to a higher power. It's me looking at the commonalities behind religion and saying, well, what is that pointing to? Not getting caught up in a tribe was not my thing. People who are in a tribe would hear that and they'd take objection to that. Fair enough. So conversely, when you're going to dark energy, you're moving away from that. You're inhabiting that energy of destruction and death in you. So you're a black hole, and what is a black hole good at doing? A black hole is good at taking. It takes and takes and takes and takes, but what does it do at the end? It collapses on itself, in effect. Okay? So we want to give, we want to expand. We want to tap into that energy and expand. What you'll notice is when you do that, when you see things that are life-affirming, it brings a tear to your eye. When you see a lot of plant life or jungle or animals or people just joyous, having fun, when you see people winning. One of my favorite shows on this earth is the show Entourage, because they're just winning. My favorite scene in all of Entourage, Johnny Drama, he thinks he's not going to get this role, and he's so angry he drives out to the Grand Canyon, and he thinks he's not going to get this role, and he sleeps overnight in the Grand Canyon thinking that he's not going to make it in life. And he gets this phone call in the morning, and they tell him he's got the role. And he looks up in the air and he yells, "Victory!" Because he used to be in the show called Viking Quest, this cheesy show. And he has the victory. It's one of my favorite moments in that show. Because right when you think you're not going to make it, you stuck on the path and you thought you couldn't get there, and then you make it. And it's about life affirmation. It's about victory. I love to see people winning. That's my favorite thing, is to see people win. So, sharing, abundance, positivity, not giving up. I want that for you. And conversely, when I see people that are tapped into a lower vibration energy, they smile sometimes at suffering or at domination or at scarcity, at a win-lose. So I'd love to see you learn about that win-win. So, like I said, this was something that I wanted to learn, and I don't want to focus it on this whole, if you just get present to the moment and surrender to that higher power, oh, now you can be happy. Because again, that looks very dopey. And sadly, a lot of the kind of Venice Beach woo-woo crowd brands it that way. But for me, what I found was that this was what I needed in order to go to the next levels in my own life. So this is the thought that I'm going to leave you with. Simple question, and I think you're going to really resonate with this. I think this is a great thing you'll resonate with. So maybe you had at one point a significant other who dumped you, and you couldn't get them back no matter how hard you tried. So then, after being sad for a while and isolated and feeling bad for yourself, you went out and you started working on your social skills, and you started meeting a lot of new people. And as you met more new people, many of them were more attractive and had more to offer than your ex. Later, you see your ex, and weirdly, you try to get your ex back at the time. They don't want you back. But now that you've met all these other people, it's almost like you're the person on the top of the mountain. You're above the game now. You're above it, and you want nothing. Because you want nothing, when you see your ex, they can kind of feel it that you want nothing. You look super cool. They start to wonder, what have they got that they didn't have before? I want them back. And your ex starts to want you back. Sadly, they may even beg on hands and knees to get you back. But you've moved on. You've gone to a higher level. You've outframed the whole issue. You didn't solve that issue of getting your ex back at the paradigm at which it was created. You went to a whole new paradigm. You went to a paradigm where that same desire that was so real and so strong to you in the past, that's not there anymore. You've moved on. You've moved on. You've let go. And you've expanded. You've grown. You've moved into a new paradigm. So you couldn't solve that paradigm at the level at which it was created. You beg your ex back on hands and knees, offered them the world, they wouldn't take you back. Then you moved on, you went on to bigger, better things, you went into your true potential or moved towards it. And now your ex wants you back. You can see this with friends who are maybe rude to you, and then you move on, you become bigger, and suddenly they become polite. In many areas you'll see that when you simply move on from something, you have a different relationship to it. You could be present to it, you can see that it's there, it's in your field of awareness, but it's not running you. It's not dictating your feelings. You're not in reaction to it. The energetic thread to it is cut, And that cutting of that energetic thread to that X or that thing you need, it opens you up to this whole other world of possibilities. And all of a sudden, you could probably get them back in a snap of a finger. They would beg for you to come back because you've shifted energetically. Well, it's that same moving on from the petty pleasures of life, the level at which you beef, the level at which you reap, need to take. You simply move on from that. You move within, and you go into a different paradigm. Maybe you need to not be tired. I'm sitting here. I mean, this was the hardest month of my life as far as work. You probably heard me say that before. You're like, what is this guy? Stop saying that. But it really has been. And at each level of that, I've had to dig deeper and go deeper. And what happens is now I'm no longer attached to needing that fulfillment of even a bit of rest. Now I'm gonna go rest. I'm gonna talk. I don't want to encourage unhealthy behavior. I'm gonna make other videos about active recovery. But even when I started this video, when I was out here, just over there, when I started it, man, I was so tired. I was like, could I really do this video? And I thought, I'm here on a beautiful day. I'd love to go shoot a video while I'm here in San Francisco. What better thing to do would be to take my kids on a boat and go shoot it. So I'm going to surrender to this. I'm going to not need to not be tired, and I'm just going to go into a flow. And as I did that, I feel more alert. Now I'm still raw. I've been public speaking. I'm actually about to go shoot right back to my event right now. Jeff's running it, so I'm going to shoot back right now. But anyway, what happens is, as I move into that present moment, there's a healing taking place. There's letting go taking place. It's allowing me to do the video that I need to do and to break through any obstacles that I need to do. And this is what I do in my regular life. That's why I'm trying to share it with you. So what happens is that when you move on from those petty pleasures, from the taking, you wind up being able to get them more easily. If I have this video, that's helping me move towards prosperity. So ironically, by not needing to, have a certain take of, maybe the rest that I would have liked or just making my life easy, but by not needing it, I move on to have things that can help me to have prosperity, and then I wind up getting a better life with more of I get to take more anyway. By not caring that I get to take, it lets me execute, go out, perform at a high level, and then get to take more. See that? So what you do is move on. Have you had enough? Have you had those little pleasures that you wanted to try? If you haven't, then let's talk about getting them. Let's get them out of the way quick. I'm not going to tell you not to get them. I want to help you to make more money. I want to help you to get better at dating, socializing, any petty thing you want. Want to take a trip? Let's talk about that. Let's have a conversation about that. But let's not do that saying that's going to make you happy. Let's do that saying it's going to help you move past it so that you see that it's not the big deal you thought it was. Still enjoy it. When I'm at Alcatraz, I'm going to take it in. I'm going to really appreciate it. I want to try to convey to you that appreciation. The ability to have a palate to appreciate is important. I can make another video about that too. It's important to take something in. Take it in, have appreciation, right? Because there's a healthy level of moving on unhealthy. It's like you have an ex, you're like, I hate them, and then you move on. That's not healthy. Saying, I love them, I wish them the best, and when you see them, it's so good to see you, you're happy to see them. But the energetic connection's been cut, and you've moved on to bigger things. I can go enjoy seeing Alcatraz, go, wow, that's so cool. It's like seeing an ex. It's beautiful, I'm so happy to see it. But I don't need that to be happy. But we could apply, because that's sort of a silly little example, but you could apply that and extrapolate and expand it to many, many different things. So we want to shift your level of consciousness here. And I'd encourage you to think about that higher reason why you're doing what you're doing, so you can expand. So your awareness can expand. You can have more intuition, longer work effort, being able to be locked in, being able to find solutions quickly to different problems, not getting thrown off by anything. And then when you do get thrown off, taking that as fuel to return back into presence, say, hey, wait, I'm going to dust myself off and come back even more grounded. That's what I want to get to. So I want you to grow inside, but ironically through that process, I want you to get 1,000 times better external results. Just like I said, imagine having to go re-attract your ex-girlfriend when you've moved on anyway. How much easier would it be? Well, when you've moved on from those petty things that you need, it's actually 1,000 times easier to go get them. You're more effective because you're not in the weeds. When you're in the weeds of the attachment, every little thing that goes right or wrong, your mood is up and down. You can't be effective. You can't see it. Imagine if you could be like that character from that show Quantum Leap, where you quantum leap into different people's lives. You just have to solve the problem. You're not identified with their problems anymore, so you just from a calm place just solve it. But you can do that quantum leap into your own life. You can say, I'm going to disidentify from this petty stuff, go to a bigger level, but yet I'm from beyond this physical experience, and yet I am grounded in this physical experience. The people who I really admire, they have a great grounding in the physical experience, but also something higher as well. They're not moving around untethered and discombobulated. I just so high. Never resonated with that. Not my thing, to be honest. But also, you're not in such a dense state that you're getting that destructive energy running you either. You want to be attached to your high vibration, and grounded. Right here is that spot. Imagine that your feet are grounded deep into the earth. And imagine a beautiful ball of light above your head that you can breathe in, just like the cross. You're right here in the middle. You're no longer needing things. But there's always going to be some needs, but not in the way most people do, where it's running them. But you're here to offer value and to expand. I would say to you, what things in this life could you have presented to you? And I don't know if there's something beyond here or not, but I'll say this. If there is, how would you be preparing yourself for something even beyond? So that's what I'm going to leave you with here today. Had a great day here with my children. I'm going to get back and teach now. Thanks for being part of the journey. And actually, thanks for waking me up before I go into teaching. So I've got a lot more to come on this. I think this was a unique take on work and execution. And like I said at the start of the video, I just think that if someone has a unique perspective, share it. So take whatever you want, leave that which you don't. If it didn't resonate with you, got a lot of just practical, straightforward tips on marketing, making money, meeting people, all sorts of stuff. We're going to talk about that too. So maybe this resonated with you, maybe it doesn't. But if this did resonate with you, probably, I think a lot of people think like this, but they don't talk about it. It seems a little out there. And so if it's your first time hearing it, could have hit on a deep level. And if it's something that's been kind of percolating in your mind or you've heard it alluded to, then maybe it will help you to add solidity to a path you're already on. Okay, so that was my purpose here. And like I said, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.